Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Friday, October 17th. Derek Van Riper, Saris, Britt here with you on this episode. We dig into both LCS series where Max Scherzer turned back the clock on Thursday night in Game 4. How did he do it? And who could have possibly seen that coming? We'll talk about the Dodgers Game 3 win over the Brewers. A win that actually narrowly, it almost sent me to the bathtub to record a post-game pod, which is not part of our recording schedule. And I am grateful that my wife said, that's probably a bad idea. Why don't you sleep on it and talk about the game on Friday with your friends? Because it'll probably be a slightly more pleasant conversation and one that makes you a little more hinged than you actually really are in real life. And it's like, yeah, that's probably appropriate. So we'll look into those series. We'll talk about a few things that are happening outside the playoffs, as we have been doing throughout the last few weeks. If you'd like to join our Discord, you can do that with the link in the show description. We got a evening chat going in there. 2 games tonight. Hopefully 2 games on a few other nights this season, but I'm starting to think that maybe we're getting down to solo standalone baseball games here in the very near future. Let's start in Seattle, though. Max Scherzer, 5 2/3. I was worried he wasn't going to get through the lineup more than once. I thought if he got through the lineup one time, they could turn it over to Lauer or Bassett to chew up some innings, then start picking out of their A bullpen if things were going well. They didn't have to do that, right? And I think I wasn't alone in this narrative. I saw in the first inning, a couple runners on base. They popped the graphic on the screen. Max Scherzer had 9 appearances prior to Thursday since his last postseason win. 36 innings, an ERA of 5, 9 homers allowed that last win, Game 1 of the 2019 World Series. But we saw a different version of Scherzer. And we also forgot to check in with Britt for her prediction. But the good news is, Britt has receipts. Britt wrote it. It was out there. She was the one person, at least the one person I know, who thought this would happen. And Britt, I know you've covered Scherzer, and I know that there is the long-standing belief that a future Hall of Famer always has a chance, even when it seems like they've got nothing left. So maybe this is on me for not believing in that possibility enough. But I got to tip the cap. That's an impressive call that Scherzer could come in and do something similar to what he did with the Nats when he couldn't turn his head because his neck was so tight, and give the Jays 5+ of really good innings that made a huge difference.
Yeah, you brought up the 19 World Series with that graphic, and he didn't get the win in Game 7, but the Nationals did. And like you mentioned, he woke up, spent all day working on his neck, went out there, threw 5 innings, 2-run ball. I thought it could be a case where it was something like that. Now, he hadn't pitched in 3 weeks, guys. So I think a lot of his nagging injuries, a lot of being 41 years old in Major League Baseball probably worked itself out in that 3-week layoff. It wasn't on the DS roster. I think he had a lot of time to study the hitters, to study the tendencies. I thought 5 innings was probably going to be it for him. I was shocked as everyone else that he pushed his way into the 6th. Didn't see that coming. I thought 5 was like best case scenario. But what was so interesting, and I think why Scherzer is such a unique talent, is the way he did it, right? He used a curveball, which is like his 4th most used pitch, to get a lot of strikeouts. So Seattle certainly wasn't expecting that. And, he went to it time and time again. Alejandro Kirk did a great job behind the plate. You could tell they had a great rapport going. And I think Scherzer knows that these moments are fleeting, that this is a countdown here, that how much longer is he going to be able to pitch in these big moments? And I think you saw that with every pitch. You saw him grunting. You saw him emptying the tank there at the end. So yes, this was a bad matchup on paper. Luis Castillo had a sub-1 ERA in his last couple starts. But I think you can never count out, like you said, DVR, a guy like Max Scherzer. You know that even if his fastball is missing a few MPH, like if he's just not the guy stuff-wise that he was in those Cy Young days, he's still going to find a way to get it done. And I think that Seattle, after losing Game 3, were a little tight. There was a lot of pressing. There were some at-bats that helped Scherzer out a lot. I think about, Gino Suarez, who looked like he was going to swing at pitches no matter what in some of these at-bats. So I think it was a perfect storm of Scherzer being a veteran and Seattle pressing a little bit, because the pressure now is squarely back on them as the series is evened.
Yeah, I think highlighting that curveball was right. I mean, because that's where the aggression of the Seattle Mariners hitters really hurt them. If you look at this heat map for just like this location map for Scherzer, like he didn't really put the curveball. He wasn't throwing the lollipop, steal a strike curveball. He was throwing curveballs almost in the dirt. You see those blue spots. They're all well below the zone. He got 6 whiffs on that curveball. That's the most whiffs he's gotten the curveball in his entire career in any game in the postseason or the regular season.
It's kind of the ultimate wrinkle when you can pull that out of your back pocket.
Yeah. His entire career. And I mean, I think you're right. It could have been guile, guile and guts. But the 3-week layoff also helped. The fastball, he threw a fastball in that game yesterday that was the second fastest fastball, or the last time he threw a faster fastball was in 2023 in June. So, he was basically throwing his hardest that he'd thrown in 2 years. And he identified their aggression and used one of his less used pitches to an effect that he'd never had in his career. So, I mean, this is the benefit of having multiple pitches, of having command of multiple pitches. You get to the postseason and you're like, oh, look, this pitch is going to be the one today. I mean, I think he probably saw Josh Naylor kind of sit, change, and hit the change out and thought, maybe it's not the changeup today. Maybe they game planned for the changeup a little bit, and just focused on the curveball. But just a really excellent performance. I've seen also people, laud the manager for not taking him out. And I mean, the way that I think that he deserves some flowers is that you go out there and he's yelling at you and you're in a position of authority. There's some emotional response to say, no, I'm taking you out right now because I'm in charge. You know what I'm saying? Like there's some part of him, because he later said, they were going into the interview room or something, and Schneider said to Scherzer, like, get in there, you effing psycho.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yes. Like, I think there is some emotional response inside Schneider that's like, you can't be yelling at me on the mound like this. Everybody can see this. Like, come on, you can't do this.
No, I don't think so, though, because this is what Max has done. Snyder said he couldn't wait for this day. He said he'd been looking forward to this in spring training.
I'm just saying, human-wise, like, just as a human, like, you're being yelled at by this guy, and like, flowers to Schneider. I'm giving flowers to Schneider for saying, I don't care. I want us to win. I'll let this guy yell at me and turn around and and leave him out there. But also, it's not like he left him out there for 8 or 9. It's not like the tying run was ever on base. Like, he left him out there for like 2 or 3 more outs, and then okay, now you've had enough. Let's go.
Yes, and Max admitted. I think what Scherzer does so well is he'll tell you when he's got nothing left. And Skubal does this really well as well for Detroit. Like, people kept wondering why Skubal didn't go longer in that game 5. Remember the DS? But if you talk to AJ Hinch, Skubal is really a guy who will say, I've got nothing left. I emptied the tank. Max Scherzer is the same way. He'll say, I've got another out or 2. And he does it more loudly. You'll see
Skubal hit like 101 to get a strikeout in the final part of an inning. And you're like, that might have been like, as you say, emptying the tank.
Yes. Yeah. So I think Scherzer knew, even when he convinced Snyder to go out there for the 6th, that he wasn't finishing the 6th, so I do think that Scherzer, and you look at 41 years old, as we talked about, multiple Cy Youngs, multiple no-hitters, a Hall of Fame resume. He's earned that right? It's different than Kevin Gossman yelling at John Snyder, right? Like, this has been Max Scherzer's MO, and because of his career and because of who he is, you trust him and you leave him out there.
Well, I want to preface all this in saying that I love Scherzer, and I think that he's high theater and it's great for the game and stuff. But I think I saw him looking over the rail, right? And everyone saw that, there's that video of him looking over the rail. And I think he's looking at the reliever who came in after him. I don't know who he's looking at. But as a person who is had that stare from Max in my life before, from across the field, you can feel him looking at you when he looks at you like that. So I don't know if he's looking at the reliever that went in for him. Is he being like, don't screw this up for me, or for us, what's he saying with that? And I think that there's on some level, there's probably somebody in that clubhouse that doesn't like it.
Well, Yeah, but
that's only how he is when he starts, though. Like, I think the common misconception with Max Scherzer is that he's just a psycho. But on the days he doesn't start, and once he comes out of a game,
I mean, he's pretty intense.
You won't find a better
lot.
teammate. You won't find a guy like when he won the World Series the first time, he was crying. Like, you won't find people more into just winning and better teammates. Ask the Blue Jays and what kind of teammate Max Scherzer is the 3 weeks he didn't pitch, right? The way him and Chris Bassett impacted the division series for Toronto, even though neither of them threw a pitch. So I think teammates love him. I don't know if I've ever heard someone say anything bad about him. They know on the days he starts, don't talk to him, don't look at him. He's Mad Max, right? That is his persona. That's what gets him ready. But that's not how he is. If that's how he was all the time,
I was just imagining being the
guys.
reliever on the mound and like looking over at me.
Yeah.
God
but
damn,
you saw the dugout.
Yeah.
All those guys loved it. You saw Springer. You saw all the guys be like, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen. In Ken Russenthal's column today, he's got like 5 Blue Jays talking about how incredible that was. So I don't think that wears thin. It's not like he does that every game. He's not yelling at John Snyder at start in May. As I mentioned, John Snyder was waiting all year for this kind of a moment for Max to be like, no. I'm getting this guy, right? I think it would be great on people if he did it 50 times a year. This isn't the case.
I think in part of what Schneider was saying too is like, I was waiting for that version of Scherzer to show up at the exact right time for him to say, I got this. And he wanted to pitch to Randy Arozarena, I think was the matchup that he was thinking about when he sent Schneider back to the dugout. And like that's
which, by
what
the way, is a pretty good matchup. I don't think that like I would be like, oh, that's one I have to circle. It's like Naylor. Who did he get removed for? It was Naylor.
It was Naylor. They brought in
Naylor's
Fluharty.
a bad matchup for him.
They brought in the rookie lefty. That was the if that's the situation you're thinking
rookie
of.
Lefty and Scherzer's looking over the top of the rail at you like that. You're like, okay, let's go.
But yeah, that curveball was huge for finishing off plate appearances. I mean, it went in the 3rd inning. They picked off Leo Rivas on review, which was big, right? Because that was a threat that the Mariners had. He gets Cal Raleigh with a back foot curveball for strike 3 there. And I think when he threw that one, that was the beginning of, this is a little bit different. He's got something extra today. And much like we saw once they got the lead with Bieber on the mound in game 3, once you give really good pitchers that extra cushion, they can expand their locations and they can force hitters to make those tougher decisions.
Team is pressing too, and they're gonna swing at those curves.
Right. He got Julio on a nasty one in the 4th. You got Suarez with another curveball in the 4th. You got Randy Arozarena in the 5th with a curveball down and away after telling John Schneider to go pound sand. So, I mean, like, it's not even like an absurd line. It's just so much better than baseline expectations would have been. I think the people around him maybe expected this as a possibility or believed this was a possibility, but they still probably didn't go into that game thinking they'd see Max pitching in the 6th inning. I think that's probably a fair sort of place to put it, even though, you never doubt Max Scherzer. The other side of this, we talked about Luis Castillo going into game 4, thinking that because of his sinker and 4-seamer combo, he might be able to control the upper part of the zone and the lower part of the zone for a couple innings. It kind of looked like, hey, all right, this is working, and things unraveled again in the 3rd. That Jays lineup, that second time through, kind of started with the bottom of the order, but the top of the order came through. I kept looking at the decision-making process, and there was a lot that I think I would have done on at least a little bit differently than the way Dan Wilson decided to manage the pitching in this game. I don't know if I would have been quite as quick with the hook on Castillo in the first place, to be completely honest. I might have let him try to get out of that mess. Gabe Spire came in, issued a walk with the bases loaded, which that happens. Like, you come in with traffic, okay. Strikes out Clement and Barger to keep it from getting worse. Keeps the game close. So ultimately, like, given the circumstances, not the worst possible scenario. But I just kept looking and thinking, like, what's their plan for Brian Wu? Do you think it's that Brian Wu's only going to enter a game in relief that they're winning, not to keep a game close potentially for multiple innings, the way he could have if he'd been part of the pitching plan for game 4?
Well, and the vibe here is that they're being very careful with him. The vibe is that, like, he's not starting, he's not, we're going to use him, but like, we won't tell you. I mean, what I'm getting from this is they want him to be the nail in the coffin. They want to use him in a game that they win, because they may not be able to use him again. That's how I feel. So I think, they're hoping Bryce Miller goes and has like 2 or 3 innings, good innings tonight, and they're ahead. That's what they want to do. Put Wu in then, or, they're losing this game. They don't put him in because they're losing. They hope Gilbert forces game 7, and then Wu is part of the, everybody on the field. What is it? Johnny Holstaff in the 7th game. But I don't think that they want to use Wu, lose the game, and not have Wu again. That's the vibe I'm getting.
It's weird that they haven't used him early. Yeah.
Yeah. What if it's close tonight? Why they wouldn't use him? You don't think? I think they would. They announced it's Miller then Wu tonight.
Okay. Yeah. I think if Miller gives it up quickly, and it's already 3-0 or something, then I don't know if we'll see him.
Then they backtrack.
If it's like a 1-run game, I think they could still use him.
Yeah.
Because your guys are right. They used so much of their bullpen because they took Castillo out early. They managed that like a must-win game and they lost it. And so now it really hurts. And it's been enough of a blowout that the Jays haven't had to like exhaust the last 2 nights, hasn't had to exhaust their A bullpen. So the advantage is now Toronto, I think, a little bit, even though Seattle has better pitchers, because also Toronto's bottom of the lineup feeling pretty good about themselves, which makes them a scary team. And I think once that bottom gets going,
man, Isaiah for love for getting 2 hits. That was crazy.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just getting beat by Vladdy.
I was on the radio in Seattle yesterday, and the bottom of the lineup there is a big discussion as being the problem, And they were hoping that Rivas would be the solution, but they put Rivas in and kept Canzone in. The worry is that Canzone is over his head. And I don't know, to say that Canzone is good or bad, we have like 600 major league plate appearances from him. Like I don't think we even know what Canzone is true talent wise, So to say he's, over his head or whatever it is, it's like he's just unproven. We don't know exactly who he is. We don't really know who Rivas is either. And the other options are like Cole Young and stuff. It's like I don't even know if he's on the postseason roster. So yeah, the bottom of the lineup is, it's been better than it's been in the past in Seattle, but it's always been a problem in Seattle because they just don't really have the resources. They're not going to spend to be good all the way through 9. They're always going to have some unproven guys 7, 8, 9. They're always going to have some defensive guys 7, 8, 9. And so, that's been part of the problem here, I guess. But the other part of the problem is, they strike out, and that was used against them in this last game. So. They just have to be able to strike out and hit for power with people on base. So it has to be a little bit more selective, I think, from them. And you're right that the Blue Jays haven't gone to their A bullpen much and they haven't seen him. But the A bullpen in Toronto is not very good.
True.
And so if they could just get to the bullpen where the game is in sight and Hoffman is pressing a little bit more, or they have to use all their relievers, I do think that, if they can get Gausman out early, they have a chance. But I would circle this as probably, favored for the Blue Jays tonight.
Yeah, I think they get the edge as a result of Gausman versus Miller, even though Miller was great in game 1. I don't.
Oh, the player smushing machine. You put Miller and Wu together.
Yeah,
that might be as good as Gausman. That's a pretty good. Wu was one of the best, 10, 15 starters in the league this year.
Here's why I just want to be careful about my assumptions. One, I looked like a doofus yesterday, which is true. Like most days, I can say I looked like a doofus yesterday. But part of my what's the plan for Wu question comes from the fact that we're going into game 5 of the series and we haven't seen him yet.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
like why haven't you used him yet?
Like, because you could have used him twice if you used him earlier. Like
he threw a bullpen though on the first day of the series. So like
it was just kind of like maybe he's our last guy in because we don't want to even use the last guy that we would bring in instead. And if he's healthier later in the series, he is by far a better option even for, 45 pitches or whatever they think he can give them.
Yeah.
So that just to me lowers my expectations for Wu. And again, I say that as someone who knows the range of outcomes is wide. I'm just trying not to expect regular season Brian Wu, even on a per inning basis, given the circumstances here, because I think we could be a little disappointed. The thing that really bugged me about Castillo's removal wasn't actually managing the game that way. It's that move preceded a decision to let Gabe Spire face George Springer in the top of the 4th. You gave up the platoon advantage to
Lefty
Springer
and righty,
with
yeah.
Matt Brash ready to go in the bullpen. That, to me, that was the bigger part of the issue. It's like, wait a minute. Like, you were managing before, like your season was on the line, and then you made a really weird decision with Spire, who had actually been worked pretty hard up to that point. I think he was in the like 25 or 30 pitch range.
But I think the problem is that you if you go to Brash earlier, Brash had, I mean, he was great, and with 10 pitches, he got 4 outs. So, if you'd done that, maybe you could have gone 2 innings with him. But you don't know that. You think maybe I can get 4 or 5 outs with Brash. Maybe I can get 4 outs with Vargas. Maybe I can get 4 outs with Bizzardo. The math doesn't really work. You're like, I guess then you have to be like, I'm going to use Munoz in a loss,
Yeah.
So I think he had to leave Spire out there just to have enough innings to use his best relievers, even in a loss. I don't know.
I guess that's how he
issue, though.
landed on it. But like that's where I think that decision to not let Castillo try to get out of that jam
Mhm.
became more risky if they didn't have the volume they needed to get through the scenario of pulling him early.
Yes. And now you wonder who's available tonight.
Yeah. Well,
How
it's
much
gonna
you
be-
can push guys tonight. That's why I think you have to pitch Wu as long as it's close. Because I don't know if you
Right.
have the outs to cover if the game is
You
close.
might need to go 7 with Wu and Miller because
Yes.
who do you have other than Munoz?
And then you get the off day in between this. So that'll help you reset. But you got to get through tonight. And tonight's a must win too.
I bet you Brash is available. It's only 10 pitches.
Yeah,
He could be
Brash should
available. But I
fine.
don't know if Spire is.
Yeah,
I
They
wouldn't.
used him
Spire threw 30
hard.
too.
I would not throw Spire today off of 32 pitches yesterday, and then more importantly, like looking at the overall body of work for him through the postseason. And I do
used.
think the conversation on our show a lot is focused on like reliever decay because of multiple looks, right? That's something that we don't know if it's true, but we've wondered if it's true. Like how much does that third or fourth
there's
look?
been some pieces like Ben Lindbergh has a piece out that he's pretty definitive. He thinks that it does exist 100%, and there's some good research in there. But there's other research like Petriello that was a little bit more up in the air. So I would say
Right.
that it's something we believe in, that there's evidence for, but it's not necessarily settled science.
And the reason why I kind of bring it up is because it could just be fatigue for the pitcher and broader usage trends coming back, several times in the same series, or even just like heavy usage from the past 3 months starting to catch up to you at this point in the year because it's the end of a very long season. So it could be as much that as it is the third time that they actually saw the reliever in a span of 5 games and became a little more familiar with the velocity and the shapes. So anyway, I just wanted
There's
to throw that out there.
a good piece on this subject right now on Baseball Prospectus by Bradley Woodrum. And he wrote about how the managers are managing as if they have great bullpens. And they're not really. They don't really have great bullpens because they're using them so hard. And
Yeah.
one of the interesting things that he showed was the playoff bullpen FIP minus. So it's fielding independent pitching versus the league. So just in a more casual way of saying it, the playoff bullpen quality with respect to regular season is usually above average, right? You're better teams, better bullpens, and so on. But it has flipped a little bit in the last couple seasons where they're worse than average. And that might be because they're tired, they're being used a lot. The other thing is that the percentage of playoff plate appearances pitched by relievers is around 48%, and that is the most it's ever been in the history of baseball. So if he has a plot in there that's really interesting, that's just playoff bullpen usage and effectiveness, and he finds that the more you use your bullpen, the less effective it is. So, I mean, these are all things that make sense to us when you say them that way. But it is interesting that they're managing a certain way that may not be optimal. They're managing for a dominant bullpen that may not actually be there when they reach for it.
Playing a bullpen as though it's the Padres bullpen when it's, just not. It doesn't have 7 high quality relievers in it. Maybe it has 4, and you feel better about some of the matchup guys than you really should, and that ultimately leaves you in a vulnerable position. And certainly,
like Castillo
certainly
against
makes
Springer,
sense.
probably a better idea,
Right.
than Spire against Springer.
Right. This was on my mind, though, because of the NLCS, where folks are being quick to point out that Aaron Ashby continues to see the top of the Dodgers lineup. The Brewers have used him very heavily as an opener, and they've used him very heavily overall. I looked at the splits since July 1st. No reliever had thrown more innings than Ashby because he comes in for multi-inning stints. That's just the usage thing. Part of it's the, hey, we got to get to the playoffs.
Saying, hey, he used to be a starter. This isn't, we're not going to do this year in and year out. This is like that. There is that first year sometimes you feel like, oh, he was stretched out to this, and so he can do this. But yeah, this isn't something that you would do with Ashby year in and year out, I don't think.
Right. It's not a 5-year plan of usage.
Yeah.
But I thought even like Adrian Morejon would be kind of like a comparable reliever for usage in the second half of the season. Morejon threw almost 10 fewer innings. It was like actually 9 to be specific, but I would have thought even usage. So my thoughts on Ashby have been maybe some of the wobbles with his command, which aren't that bad. Like all things considered, it's just, making occasional mistakes is going to cost you this time of year. Maybe that's just the cumulative fatigue more so than, hey, the Dodgers top hitters got 3 looks at him. And the thing that I'm still just sitting here stewing in on Friday morning is the leadoff triple from Shohei Ohtani, because Ashby, I think, had a great plan, had him set up, and threw him, I think it was a 3-2 slider down and away that would have been a called strike, at least based on the TV box. It was clearly going to be a strike, both in terms of how high it was and how close to the plate it was. It looked like a perfect slider. And Shohei Ohtani, with the swing you see on YouTube, but far out it extended, reaching down there, somehow pulled that ball down the right field line for a leadoff triple. And I think I come to the conclusion after just like sleeping on it, rewatching it a few times.
He's stepping in the bucket. It looks like this is like, a weak oppo ground ball, or like at best an oppo, like, little flare
over the third baseman, right? Like he slapped, okay. And you're like, all right, fine. But he tripled off of that, which is just at a certain point, you just say, hey, the pitcher actually executed a good pitch. The hitter had a pretty good plan for what he wanted to do, expecting a breaking ball down and away. And that particular hitter happens to be maybe the best hitter in the world or one of the best hitters in the world. And it just worked out, right? And I know the next pitch that Mookie Betts drove, it was a fastball, like middle of the plate, in the zone, down, but it was just way too much plate. That was a bad pitch. Like I'll just flat out say that that's what that was. But the Ohtani triple is just the throw your hands up sort of moment where you're like, you did pretty much anything you could reasonably do, and he did that. And sometimes that's going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
This is the big leagues. This is a team that could win the World Series again.
Actually, I'm going to push back a little bit. The Mookie Betts pitch was on the black.
It was middle. It was middle of the plate, right? It was down, but it was middle of the plate.
I'm just looking at the illustrator, and it says it was on the strike zone border. So, and all 4 of the pitches that they put in, or that were finished. What was it? Is that a walk? Did he walk Freddie Freeman?
Yeah.
Anyway, all 4 of his pitches that finished plate appearances were like right on the black. I was prepared to see, there's something middle here, but he didn't really do that. I would say that just supports your point generally that, they just executed well, and Ashby's execution wasn't even that far off,
No, he's filthy, and the teams are just finding ways to scrape out runs against them, and it's maddening. It is. I would say that he pitched
every single one of his pitches was belt or low. So, they did, if you're right that, like, Ohtani was like anticipating something low.
Yeah.
So
you narrowed down the possibilities perhaps with the game plan.
Yeah. So I think they all were looking lower third in the zone.
And
I'm not saying that Ashby needs to just all of a sudden throw at the top of the zone, but maybe a couple of high fastballs they might not have been prepared for.
Oh. It
I'm
just
So
that series
I would
just
say it's mostly
feels
Dodger execution. I mean,
yeah,
they're a really good
yeah.
team.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And you sit home, and sometimes as a fan, you're like, oh, why you were swinging at that pitch? And like big leaguers, I once saw Vlad Guerrero Jr. take a ball that bounced off the plate and hit it out. Right. So if you are a big leaguer, and if you are, those names you mentioned aren't your like general replacement player big leaguers. Talking about Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, right?
Mhm.
These are the upper echelon, the upper 1% of players. They're going to take pitches that are good pitches, and they're still going to hurt you. That's why the Dodgers are so good. That's why those guys are so good, right? So it's really tough. And I do wonder if seeing Ashby a bunch, if kind of knowing if like it's that familiarity of, oh, he's not going high, we can look here in the zone, if that really helped them, I don't know. But let's not forget also that the Brewers offense has largely gone missing. And part of that, again, on the flip side, is you look at the Dodgers rotation. And I had a manager text me yesterday, like, yeah, it's a copycat league. I would definitely copy the Dodgers rotation, right? Like, it's just ridiculous
If I
who
had
they're
the
throwing
time.
out there, right? Like, so that's on the flip side, too. It just seems like the Dodgers are a better team. And yes, the Brewers are the best offensive team in baseball. Yes, we know about the wins and the year that they had. But we also know the Dodgers had a lot of injuries. And we didn't see a lot of full strength Dodgers. And we're kind of seeing now why people thought that they were the Death Star, right? Why people thought that they were going to spend all this money and be so much better than everyone else. They are a very good team. They are showing it. I think it is more the Dodgers being good than the Brewers messing up when it comes to like why this series is 3-0.
And shout out to the Dodgers coaching staff. They had a really fun moment where before the game, the coaching staff really honed in on infield in throws to home. And so they actually spent like a good 10, 15 minutes just doing infield in throws to home. And then they have this great Maxi Muncy.
Maxie.
I think he would like that nickname. I've been trying to come up with nicknames for the
why don't you
boys
try
on
that
the Little
one?
League team.
Next time you see Max Muncy, you should float that one by him.
Yeah. Anyway, so he had a great moment where he fields a ball like, almost, towards shortstop, and he just whips around and throws it right to home. And that's sort of where preparation meets talent, so that was a kind of a cool moment I'm always like on the lookout for the impact of the coaching staff. And I feel like that's kind of a thing I circled there. I mean, yes, it was a great play by Muncy, but it also just helped that he was primed for that play by,
Yeah.
hey, that's the thing that we spent 10 minutes on, specifically before the game started.
Yeah, it's been interesting because yesterday it looked like the Brewers were going to use Jose Quintana as their primary pitcher, and if they'd actually done that, I think today would be going like, why hasn't Jacob Misiorowski pitched yet? Like that would have been the question. They naturally went Misiorowski behind Ashby. Learned that a little after we recorded, a little before the game started, and they got good Miz. They got great Miz. I mean, they got a version of Jacob Misiorowski that just went toe to toe with what Tyler Glasnow did on the other side. And I think that's really encouraging in and of itself. And it's fun to watch, man, when Jacob Misiorowski's locating 94, 95 on the slider, upper 80s curveballs, aside from the fastball velocity, just it gives you a level of confidence when you're watching a guy like that. You're like, well, we could beat anybody when he's out there. He at least gave them a chance. And I think that compared to the Quintana scenario is just a night and day sort of difference.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, there are definitely the takes out in the takeosphere that they're messing with the Misiorowski's ability to I don't know what it is. They're messing with Misiorowski by using an opener. That they should have just put Misiorowski out there as a starting pitcher. I don't know. Like when you're a young pitcher coming up into the big leagues, you're pretty used to not, all sorts of weird things. You've been piggybacked in the minor leagues. You've been used for 3 innings. You've been used for 5. Like you come to the big leagues, and I think for the most part, most pitchers when they get to the big leagues are like, what do you need from me? You know,
Yeah.
like where do you want me? So I don't think that Misiorowski is like, oh, but usually I pet my dog and I walk in the outfield with my shoes off and like all the stuff the starters love to do. I get grounded. I do all that stuff, and I feel like they're not. And then could Misiorowski, could they have started him, and could they have gotten 90 pitches out of him? I mean, Misiorowski wasn't actually throwing a lot of bulk in terms of pitches per outings, during the regular season and during the year. So I think that they got what they wanted out of Misiorowski, and I don't think that he had that many more pitches in him. I mean, am I wrong? What could they have started the game with?
Though they could have started the game with him. That's probably the hindsight sort of question you could ask, and I don't know if it's unfair to ask it or not. It really depends on how you feel about Ashby matching up against those lefties. But I think the reason you continue doing it is because Ashby's filthy. Ashby has good stuff. You're not throwing just a lefty with average pitches out there. You're throwing a guy that throws in the high 90s and has nasty breaking balls and can locate them like that. That seems like a pretty good idea against Ohtani and Freeman at the top of the lineup, especially. And knowing you can get those matchups at that time and get them when it matters is why you do it. So I don't think it was the wrong call, even though it didn't end up working out for the reasons we're talking about. I think you're probably right, especially because he wasn't being used like a regular starter at the very end of the regular season. Length is not there right now for Misiorowski in terms of going 90 pitches. Now, in future years or in another series, maybe, if they can somehow get out of an 0-3 deficit and pull a 2004 Red Sox, no one's making that call right now. If you have that receipt, be sure to hold on to it, because we'll have a spot for you on the show next week to join us. But I don't think they could have pushed him much more. I think we did start to see a little bit of that fatigue, not in terms of a massive velo drop, but in terms of not being able to put the top of the order hitters away. I mean, Freddie Freeman battled back to get that walk. They went ahead and went to the bullpen not long after. The crazy thing for me, the kind of passing thought I've had about relievers, and this doesn't apply only to this situation, but it's just one that I thought a lot about, because Abner Uribe tried to pick off, I believe it was Tommy Edman, who's playing with a bad ankle, happened to throw the ball away. That's when the Dodgers' third run scored. And it didn't end up mattering. The Brewers didn't get anything going against that Dodgers bullpen. If it had got a second run and that would have been a tie game scenario, then we'd be talking a lot more about it. I was thinking about this in terms of Abner Uribe is a guy that I think has good stuff, but still kind of slightly below average command. It's better than it was, but we've even seen
he should not be throwing over.
He shouldn't be throwing over in that situation, especially knowing Edman's got a bad ankle. I was also wondering, where do you draw your lines as far as your relievers that you bring in with traffic? And maybe in the playoffs, you're just this is my best guy. I think he can get a strikeout. This is why I'm using him, and that's the whole story. I thought of it more from do I want my fringy below average command guys coming in with traffic on, or would I rather use them an inning early with a clean slate? I wondered if Abner Uribe maybe belongs in that sort of bucket. Still a very good reliever, a guy you want to use in high leverage spots, but someone you don't necessarily bring in with a couple of runners on base.
I mean, I think that's fair. I think there's probably a math equation you can put up for this one in terms of times to plate and, the kind of stuff that teams are doing on the other end, where they're like, okay, he's this slow to the plate, we're going to run. The other thing that I just think that Kyle Bodie, put this out on social media, where he thought that most throws to first are negative return on investment, and that you should control the running game. So when he got to the Reds, when he was the director of pitching for the Reds, he said controlling the running game is a huge part of what we want to do. And he had a key performance indicator that was about controlling the running game. He made it part of the daily report that every pitcher saw, and all this stuff. But he said the way we do it, or looks, varying our times to the plate, these are the ways that we do it, not necessarily throws over. So, it was it's something that he implemented while he was with the Reds. He said they really improved year over year. And I could see it, especially at second base. Do not throw it over at second base unless you really think you got the guy, because you're throwing at second base that you're throwing to a moving target, and there's all of the outfield behind you. It's just, it's disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And
Though on
the
the flip
mechanics of throwing there
side,
too, also challenging.
right. Yeah. Picking off a guy at first base has a huge lift for your team, especially in the
That's
playoffs.
true.
I've seen it. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with never throwing over, especially in the playoffs when any out is a big
I
out.
guess I wouldn't say never,
know?
but like I'd just be pretty conservative with it. I'd want to think I had him. Like I was
Yeah.
pretty sure I had him.
Yeah. And I agree. The times to the plate is the biggest factor. Like throw the ball quickly to the plate. You're going to do a good job of controlling the running game in general. But yeah, I do think once in a while you got to flash it to keep guys honest.
Some other notes here. Jackson Chourio had to leave this game mid-plate appearance late. He aggravated the hamstring. They're saying it's a cramp. He ended up kind of hopping off the field, and Blake Perkins had to come in and finish that plate appearance. Says he's available for game 4.
But it's in the hamstring that he had a problem
It
with.
was the same one that he had previously strained, and it's been a little bit of a problem in the postseason. Cost him a month during the regular season. I mean, he hurt it swinging the bat, not even like running in the outfield or running the bases. So obviously,
that's
yes,
not great.
It's not great.
We'll see what we get for game 4 on that front. I did see the note that Anthony Santander is off the Blue Jays roster. That happened prior to the game on Thursday as well.
And because of the way that works, he's out.
Right.
If they
he's
make
out
it
for
to the World Series. You can't, so.
Can't come back.
It must have the way that he had a back problem late in the season. He tried to come back from it, and they said that the back felt stiff, so it must have felt, worse than stiff, really.
Yeah. Joey Loperfido was added to the roster. The adjustment was that Isaiah Kiner-Falefa plays second, Ernie Clement plays third, Addison Barger moves out to the outfield. We saw Addison Barger showing off that arm, had a diving catch out there as well. Don't try to take extra bases on Addison Barger. Just don't do it.
94.1 miles an hour, dude.
Yeah. He caught Josh Naylor for the third out at third
and
base.
I thought for a second,
Big out.
I thought for a second that was like one of those deals where the base runner basically runs into an out on purpose to make sure that they get the run at the plate.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely something that's happening in baseball where like you'll just be like, why did that guy go for second? It's to like get the throw to go to second, and make sure, maybe get in a pickle or turn around and get caught, but make sure you score the run. I think in that situation, if you're the Blue Jays, though, if you're the Mariners, though, you would rather almost second and third, no runs scored and no out. Then
you'd rather have a crack. You'd rather have a crack for the bigger inning in that instance. Yeah. So tough base running mistake. Addison Barger making Josh Naylor pay on that one. Or maybe just forgetting the scouting report or not knowing the scouting report. That's
Or the flip side. It's the flip side of there's a couple of nicknames out there. One was like Thicky Henderson.
Who for Josh Naylor?
Yes.
No.
Oh man. No. You don't know the real one with the fan base. Not to get too logged up. They've been calling him Big Grumper because he always looks grumpy. So they have Big Dumper and Big Grumper. He does. He has RBF. He 100% has RBF. You don't know what that is? Google it.
No, I know. He doesn't seem like he'd actually be grumpy though, does he? He might
but that's
look grumpy,
like what he
but I don't think
projects,
he's
which
got
is why
a little bit of that Scherzer
him.
face. He has a little bit of that Scherzer face. It's really
Google
intense.
It, or put it into Twitter, go to the Reddit threads. He's Big Grumper. It's awesome. Actually, I'm waiting for somebody to write it. Maybe I will. But it's Big Grumper.
The flip side of Thicky Henderson though is if he gets all those steals off of not great foot speed, is he doesn't really have the foot speed when he makes the wrong read. He doesn't really have the foot speed to turn the wrong read into the right thing. Like Ellie De La Cruz can make the wrong read and still be safe.
Yeah, you're right.
Like you could pick off Ellie De La Cruz and whoops, he's still safe at second.
True, you're right. Doesn't happen to the Grumper.
Yeah.
Got one little bit of non-playoff news that I wanted to make sure we brought up today. Britt, you had a report earlier in the week that former Astros GM James Click is among the candidates for the Rockies' top baseball ops job. I don't know if they're going to say president of baseball operations or GM or how they're going to structure it with the new group, but I think the big story here isn't necessarily Click himself, but it's a list of candidates from outside the organization, and many of them are highly regarded around the game as possible great fits.
Analytically minded, most of them.
Right, which if you are a Rockies fan is probably music to your ears because you could have someone heading up your baseball operations department that will do things a lot different than the last couple of regimes in Colorado.
Yeah, yay, Colorado. There was not a whole lot really, guys, of any news or anything had leaked out. So it was nice to kind of get a sense of what they were doing. Other names, of course, assistant GM in Cleveland, Matt Foreman, who was also up for the Nationals gig before it went to Paul Tabani, and Scott Sharp with Kansas City, who isn't known to be as analytically driven as the other guys mentioned, but I think people don't realize that they did double their analytics staff under JJ Piccolo. They are a team that uses a lot of information. Scott Sharp, it's worth noting, was supposed to go to the Giants front office. He was like the top pick a couple of years ago, but did not leave because of family reasons. So he has been in the mix for other jobs. He's very well liked around baseball. He's seen as a guy who really has adopted the analytics and all of that stuff as well. And he's a big part of what's been able to go on in Kansas City. So I think those are great candidates. I don't know if there are more. I'm not certain if that's an exhaustive list or not, but I do think, like you guys said, it is nice that they have a group of candidates that are not from Colorado. I know they've said on the record that they want whoever to come in to have this vision of how to, be good without spending in the top 5 of payroll, like to win the way the Rockies win, to address the pitching situation there. And, there are a lot of really unique issues when it comes to them. But I think a lot of executives, as Andy McCullough wrote recently, like that job. Feel like if I win here, I can win anywhere. I can be a god if I can win here. So I think that they are expected to pare down over the next week and get to the finalist stage because they also are one of 10 teams now, 9 teams that need a manager. So they got to hurry up, solidify this, and then get into the manager mix. So I do think it's good news for the Rockies. I think it's a situation where no matter who goes there, you're going to take a few years. It's going to be a little bit of time here before we see any improvement. But, I think you kind of have a blank slate too, which is probably encouraging to guys.
I mean, I like that. I like it's music to my ears. And I've heard the same thing from guys that that is I've heard the word dream job from somebody because he's like, if you do that there, you are, you might be a Hall of Fame executive. So, I'm into that. The main thing for me though is ownership has sold a bill of goods to people before, or at least management has sold bill of goods to people before. We've had interesting analytical names go there to be directors of R&D, and then we've had entire R&D departments quit en masse in consecutive years. So we know that there has been a problem in the past of, them telling people, oh yeah, you'll have carte blanche, you'll be able to do this, you'll be able to do this. Then they get there and they're, quote unquote, doing laundry instead of actually, getting to implement their analytical ideas. So, I mean, I don't know how you get this. Can you get it in the contract? How do you get assurances that I can actually come in here and do what I want to do? How do you, how do you believe Montfort when you're just but I've talked to these other guys that all quit and, what do you say to that? I would try to have a really hard conversation knowing that it might tank my ability to actually get the job. I would be like, but what do you say to this person who left in March, who was your director of R&D? What do you say to this person? What do you say to these people that you said you can do these things? Because I want to come in here. Probably if I take the job, I want to come in and do some stuff that we have maybe never seen before in baseball, or, I want to do some really innovative things. And it's not going to be easy. And people are going to say you're an idiot, and people are going to say I'm an idiot. And, you got to give me cover. You got to give me 5 years, and you got to let me try different things. It might even take more than 5 years. So I don't know. I like the list, and I think it does represent a step forward for the organization to even consider these names and not just take their former director of scouting and elevate him to GM, as they did last time.
Right.
So this is a step forward, but if I'm James Click, I'm nervous. I'm excited, but I'm nervous that he's telling me one thing and then I get in there and it's totally different.
I've been under the impression that whether it's this job or another one, James Click's going to get another chance to run baseball operations somewhere. I mean, the terms under which he left the Astros were basically just Jim Crane related. It wasn't that James Click did a bad job at all. Like, so,
Yeah.
Yeah, but an owner has to hire him, so the owner
Yeah,
might be
right.
like, so
Well-
you didn't play nice with your last owner.
I did a quick search to jog my memory about the laundry comment, and that was during 2020. So it was like, hey, let's find something to do because there's no baseball, which doesn't make it better. It's just the context of when the analytics folks were doing laundry in Colorado. It led me to an old story from Ken Rosenthal and Nick Groke, and I did not remember this from the story, although I do remember the story broadly. Dick Montfort thinks he's Theo Epstein, one person familiar with the Rockies operation said. What? How? Based on what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do they have
that's
in
an
common?
incredible
That's the
find.
problem right there.
That's a
That's
great
the
find.
problem. So, James Click, read that line, please.
I mean, if that's the case, that's like a Jerry Jones level of hands-on owner that I have been previously underestimating. Like, I know that owners have varying levels of how involved they are, but man, like Dick, like look at your own track record and then look at Theo's track record and try to explain to me how those are the same, because they are. They are not.
I had people
bad.
pushing back on me when I said that, it's a possibility the park saps, 6-7 wins off of their win total every year, in the park and the elevation. And they were like, oh, well, they've been successful before. But I have to tell you, I looked at the Colorado's Rockies success, and it is bare bones. For their entire history, the Rockies are under 500. They've never won the division. They
Zero.
never won the division. They did make it to the World Series once. So they had success in the postseason once, but they never won. They've won NL pennant, no division titles, and I think it's 2 or 3 wild card entries. That's not much success for how long they've been around. Look at the Diamondbacks as in opposition. Around as long.
That's fair.
A lot more success.
So hopefully we hear soon what's going on there. Hopefully it's a good hire. Those are at least inspiring names. But
you also, I want to give you some flowers for your reporting on the holding company for the Detroit Tigers and the Red Wings. You reported on some of the different things that were terrible in that organization about how they were treating women. But one of the very specific things that was sort of a corporate decision was that they didn't even have paid maternity leave, which is pretty backwards in today's America. And what did they announce today? That they changed that, didn't they?
Yeah, they sent an email yesterday afternoon that they are going to offer up to 12 weeks, for the actual person that births the child, and then the other significant other can get up to 2 weeks of paid leave. So they finally have something, which is
That's
great.
Not like league leading, but it's
up to 2.
It's no longer the worst situation. Yeah,
Right. It's just wild that, for those who aren't familiar, it's Ilitch. It's the Ilitch Holdings Company. They also own the Red Wings, the Tigers, both of their stadiums. So this is a lot of workers. This is a lot of people. This is a huge corporation, several concert venues in Detroit as well. It blows my mind that they were not able to offer this benefit until they were shamed into offering this benefit.
Right.
But
good job. That's the work of journalism, shine the light on it, and hopefully there's something changes.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that follow-up, good call bringing that to the table. One more question for you, Britt. Albert Pujols' name keeps coming up now as a managerial candidate. First in Anaheim, where all the jokes were, well, isn't he getting paid anyway by Artie Moreno?
Yes.
And the Orioles actually surfaced as a team that were interested in Pujols as a manager as well. Do you think that there is a misconception about Pujols as a legitimate managerial candidate? I feel like from the outside, there are some people that just think, oh, he's a great player, but he'd never be a good manager. And that seems pretty dismissive and unfair, but how serious is the interest from the Orioles and the Angels, and based on what you have heard so far?
So I think he's still a legitimate candidate in Anaheim. I don't know if that's the case in Baltimore. I think the Orioles need a veteran. They need to kind of go the opposite direction that they went from Hyde. Teams that tend to go the opposite way. Look at the Angels coming off of Ron Washington. It makes a little more sense to go with a guy. My issue with Pujols is not that he's never going to be a great manager. My issue is he's never been in the dugout. He's never, and I know that is the trend now to some extent, but I do think it's a big difference to go to what he is right now. And, you can make the case that, he's a special assistant. We're not entirely certain what these player special assistants do. It's not the same as a James Click special assistant in Toronto. Okay. The list of responsibilities and the input you have is a lot different if you are a Nick Hundley in Texas versus an Albert Pujols in Anaheim. Okay. I know this for a fact. So I think my concern with
there are
Albert
some special
Pujols,
assistants, in other words, that show up and, hang out with the players and
yes. And that's Albert Pujols. He's under a contract where he's getting $1 million a year. Ryan Zimmerman under this in DC, right? Ryan Zimmerman isn't involved in the front office inner workings and operations. This is kind of more similar to Pujols. Kurt Suzuki, Torrey Hunter, also guys that are special assistants. So I think the thing with Pujols that people are a little wary about is, one, the lack of experience. Two, he was a phenomenal player. That doesn't translate over all the time. And he was also known for being very moody. You were never certain what mood he was going to be in.
Yeah, he was not that much fun to cover. So I don't know how his interaction with media is going to go. I mean, that's at least half the job, I feel like, almost.
Contentious at times. And I think the mood swings are something that you can't have as a manager. You have to be this main steady presence. And so I just don't know how that's going to carry over. And I'd feel a lot better about it if, say, Albert Pujols had been a bench coach for a year or two, or been a first base coach and kind of understood the job and said, this is what I want to do. But it's way different to manage in the Dominican or in the WBC than it is an entire big league season, which starts in February, could end in November. I think that is a bigger concern. I know with the Angels, the money was a little bit of a holdup. Sam Bloom reported yesterday, and I heard as well that they backed off Pujols a little, that Artie Moreno wants a legitimate search. So you are going to see the Rocco Baldellis and the Ryan Flahertys and the Brandon Hyde and the Nick Hundleys, and you are going to see those names on the Angels list. Now, whether those guys are smart enough to say thanks, but no thanks, that remains to be seen, right? Could Albert Pujols be their best and only candidate who wants that job, right? I don't know. There's going to be a lot that factors into that as well. But, I think when it comes to a guy like Pujols, I think he could be a great manager someday. I'm just wondering where we as an industry have gone. Have we devalued the position to a point where we're like, hey, you used to play, let's put you in there because you're just going to follow our script here anyway. But the thing is he wasn't even this warm and fuzzy like Torrey Hunter, great clubhouse leader. Everyone loved him. That wasn't Albert Pujols. So I'm curious where that fits in, right? He's not even he'll tell great story. Torrey Hunter would be great to cover as a manager because he's great with the media. He tells great stories. You could walk away saying that was a great conversation, even if he gave you no real info. You're not going to get that with Albert Pujols. So it seems to me hey, we're already paying him. Let's see if he'll manage. Which is such a
God, that's so hard to Moreno if that's what it is.
I mean, that's part of it, and that's part of what the holdup is over money. Because Artie's I'm already paying you $1 million, and it's if you're paying me $1 million to do nothing, I'm not going to manage on top of that, right? Yeah. So that's part of the holdup. I've heard. You guys are laughing. This is real.
Oh my God. I just think that it's so funny. He's I can get $1 million savings on this.
Yeah, I mean, he's well, you know what? You can also do this.
Playing off of some of the stuff you were saying in there, I think Ryan Flaherty is one of my favorite, possible managers. When you talk about has he had experience, he's been a bench coach. He's been a bench coach. He's been a bench coach with a sort of meddling GM in San Diego with AJ Preller. He's been a bench coach under the highest paid manager in the big leagues in Chicago. So I think he's seen different approaches. He was a first round pick, and he's the son of a manager. So he's lived the sort of manager baseball life his entire life. I mean, his dad is 35 years at the University of Southern Maine. So he has that background. And as a first round pick who then struggled and was a utility player and had to try every different thing, I think he can speak to both kinds of players, both the prima donna first round pick. Like he can remember what it must have been like to like come out of the college environment that he had. He was really good in college. First round pick, feels like the world is his oyster. And then he can also speak to the 26th man on the roster and be like, I know what it was like when you don't know, if you're going to be on the team in a month. So I just don't. I feel like he's been in places that are a little bit more analytical and a little bit less analytical. So he's sort of an ideal candidate for me. I mean, just enough experience that you feel like he's not totally green. But also not so much experience that you're like, oh, he's already proven that he can't do it or whatever. Especially if I was like a Nationals team or like a building team, I would want him. But I think even an established team, it would be interesting to give him a chance.
Yeah, I agree. And he's a guy who could have gone the front office route because I think he's very interested in the analytical way of the game. So he's a little bit of a blend in that regard. So yeah, I think he's a strong candidate. I think there'll probably be a lot of teams interested. I think the Nationals low key is a great job. Maybe people are overlooking it because you've got a guy in Taboni who probably got 5 years, right, to be president, to leave Boston. So now
you might be able to do innovative things, right, as a team because there's
exactly
it's cleaned house.
And you're on a team that's not expected to win right now. The danger with the Orioles is if you take that job and they start playing poorly, Elias is on the hot seat. Now the guy who hired you is on the hot seat, right? So I think in DC, the arrow's pointed up, but you're not expected to win immediately. So you have some time to settle into the job. The media spotlight's not as big. You can grow into the role. You could probably get a pretty long deal. And I think that is low-key one thing
Derek brought up, though, is AL East. So
NL
like,
East?
NL East. So just the East, like maybe the Twins job is a fun one because
But is it? Because they keep cutting payroll on you. And the vibes have never been worse. I think the Nats job is better than the Twins job for sure. Well, just because of Taboni and the new guys that they're bringing in, and like you could be part of building something up, and they're not in such dire straits that they might not be that bad 3 years from now. You know what I mean? So I think that's a great first-time manager gig. I really do because of what's going on there. And they might change ownership after the CBA. Learners might not keep them forever. I don't know. It just
and they also seem a little bit better at creating hitters than pitchers. And for me, from my taste, I feel like it's easier to turn a pitching program around than a hitting program.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's like low-key an underrated job. Because of security. If you're going in as a manager and you want a 3-year deal, you want some security, your butt's not going to be on the hot seat at the end of year one. I can't say that in some other places like San Francisco or Baltimore. The Braves are going to win. We got to win. Yeah, exactly. So I think if you're looking at it. 5
managers in 11 years for Preller?
Right. And Flaherty was a finalist for that San Diego Dodgers. So he's going to be in the mix there. So you just wonder where people are going here with that. Like, I think a guy like Hundley, you're looking at, okay, I have a really great job with the Rangers. I'm only leaving if it's a really good job manager. I'm not going to the Angels, So you're seeing first-time managers, but you're also seeing guys who have a little leverage, could be a little picky. Rocco Baldelli is getting paid this upcoming year, no matter what. Brandon Hyde's getting paid next year, no matter what. So you have some like really good candidates, but I think you also have these guys that are like, well, I don't necessarily have to take that job. I can go the Skip Schumacher route, wait a year and wait for my job.
Get a better situation,
Yeah,
especially if you're getting paid this year. You definitely want to take the first job that comes your way. If you're lucky enough to be lucky enough to have been fired, but still getting paid. I'm just thinking about the lack of experience thing we're talking about. At least with Pujols managing in winter ball, that's more experience than Aaron Boone had when the Yankees hired him. The Yankees hired him out of ESPN's booth, man. Like that's
crazy,
that's pretty wild when you think about it. And then he's still there. And I don't know. Yankees fans maybe don't love him, but I don't think he's awful. So who knows? But I think the thing that you guys said about Pujols that would make me have some pause about him as a manager would just be if he doesn't have those relationships with players, which I was under the impression, at least when the Dodgers picked him up, maybe because it was a veteran team and a lot of guys that grew up looking up to him, like they saw a legend and just wanted to be close with him on a day-to-day basis and get to know him.
There were a lot of stories during that period that he was a great teammate. So I will be agnostic on that one. Not sure how that goes down. But I do know that as a member of the media, he was not very easy to cover.
Yeah, I do know that as a member of the Angels, there were issues in the clubhouse with him.
Sure. Right. And that's, who knows, right? Like those things could be a problem. Those could be nothing. But it's all out there, at least as something to think about. I do think he's serious about wanting to be a manager. This has been going on for a while. He's set to manage the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic. As you guys said, it's not the same. Like Mark DeRosa managed the U.S. team last year, and you don't hear his name coming up as a candidate to go take over a team and leave his job at MLB Network, right? Because it's just a different sort of commitment.
He got floated somewhere.
Did he?
Yeah. But you're right, the Aaron Boone thing. But see, I think that's a reflection of if you want more control over your manager, you want them to have less experience because they're going to have less say and they don't know how it works other places. So that to me is kind of like the Braves aren't going to do that. They need someone with experience. They're an experienced team. They're a win now team. I just think it depends on the front office and how comfy they are with calling the shots and having more power. And certainly the Yankees, there's been a lot of talk about this, that Aaron Boone doesn't necessarily have a lot of power.
Yeah, Susan Waldman pushed back and just said that he just agrees with how their worldview in the front office.
So they picked. Well, they may have picked him for that. They found a lot of overlap, and it was easier to get that overlap because of a limited amount of previous places where he had been able to. His experience came from playing, and he played in that organization too. So there was some overlap there in terms of ideas and beliefs. So anyway. I thought that was interesting that we got the manager carousel spinning about as much as it's ever been spinning, with so many vacancies to be filled here in the weeks and months ahead. Hopefully weeks. Hopefully it's just a couple of weeks for these teams and not something that's lingering on deep into November. We are going to go. I hope we see the Brewers survive the weekend. I don't have a high level of optimism that will be the case, but great baseball to watch nonetheless. As I mentioned earlier, you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. That is going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Monday.
Thanks for listening.